My daughter's fiancé forbade me from attending their wedding, sneering. People like you have no place at our celebration. My daughter stayed silent, siding with him, choosing wealth over family. But when my Rolls-Royce rolled up, and he realized the truth about my fortune, 17 million, the look on their faces was priceless. You won't believe what happened next. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment with the current time where you are. And frankly, old man, people like you shouldn't even be here. Victor sneered. This is going to be an elite event, and you just spoil it. The crystal chandelier above our table seemed to flicker as his words sank in. My hands shook slightly against the pristine tablecloth. Every eye in the oak-paneled restaurant felt like it turned toward us. The wealthy diners at nearby tables leaned in, whispering, their murmurs buzzing with curiosity. Victor lounged in his $3,000 suit, an arm possessively draped across my daughter's shoulders. His gold watch caught the overhead light as he gestured dismissively at my simple button-down shirt and khakis. I'd navigated 90 minutes of Manhattan traffic to meet this man, hoping to connect with the person Loretta had claimed to love. Dad? Loretta's voice was a tentative whisper. She wore a designer gown I'd never seen before, transforming her into someone almost unrecognizable. Her manicured fingers nervously toyed with the massive diamond on her ring finger. Maybe Victor has a point, she said. Her words hit harder than any insult he could have thrown. This is going to be a very refined celebration, she continued, avoiding my eyes. The guest list, it's mostly Victor's colleagues and their families. People from a certain social circle. I stared at my daughter, the same little girl who used to defend me when other kids mocked our modest car, who proudly introduced me as the smartest dad in the world. Now she couldn't even meet my gaze while agreeing I wasn't worthy of her wedding. Victor snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. Bring another bottle of Dom Riol, he said, then smirked at me. You understand, right? Nothing personal. Just business. Image is everything in my world. The waiter hurried off, probably relieved to escape the tension. I noticed the staff now avoided our table. Their polite smiles felt forced as snippets of the conversation reached them. Daddy, please, don't make this harder than it has to be, Loretta pleaded, finally looking at me, but there was no warmth in her eyes, only embarrassment. I felt the floor fall out from beneath me. The ringing in my ears grew louder as I processed it. My own daughter, the child I'd raised alone after Mary died, the girl I had worked double shifts to buy school clothes for, was choosing this arrogant stranger over me. I understand, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I wish you both happiness. I folded my napkin carefully, set it beside my untouched wine glass, and rose. My movements felt robotic, disconnected from the turmoil inside. The couple at the table behind us had stopped pretending to eat, watching our private drama like theater. As I walked toward the exit, Victor's voice carried across the room. See? That was easy. Sometimes you just have to be blunt with people like that. The doorman held the heavy glass door for me, his expression neutral. Behind me, I heard Loretta's nervous laugh, forced, artificial, nothing like the genuine joy of her childhood. The cool spring air hit my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk, but it couldn't soothe the burning shame in my chest. My hands trembled so violently I fumbled with the keys. I sat in my old pickup truck, parked in the restaurant lot, watching through the windows as Victor and Loretta returned to their meal. She laughed animatedly, gesturing with her wine glass while he nodded approvingly, both seemingly relieved, as if some unpleasant problem had been solved. Finally, the engine rumbled to life. I merged into Manhattan traffic, the city's glittering wealth mocking me through the windshield. Ferrari after Mercedes after BMW surrounded my worn truck. Their drivers probably wondered who this foolish relic belonged to. I drove on autopilot, muscle memory guiding me toward I-95 North. Classical music played on the radio, unfamiliar and distant, but I couldn't focus. Victor's words replayed in my mind. People like you, beggars! Worse than the cruelty was the realization. This humiliation hadn't been spontaneous. He had planned it, probably rehearsing Loretta on exactly what to say. The Bronx gave way to Westchester County, familiar exit signs flashing past. Normally, this drive brought comfort, escaping the chaos of the city for the calm of Connecticut. Tonight, every mile felt like sinking deeper into isolation. At a rest stop near White Plains, my hands shook again. I pulled over under the harsh fluorescent lights, the scent of gasoline and stale coffee stinging my nostrils. A few truckers moved between the pumps, their conversations a low murmur in the night. I dug into my wallet and pulled out the photo I'd carried for 15 years. Mary and me at Loretta's college graduation. We looked so proud, so full of hope. Mary's arm wrapped around our daughter while Loretta beamed at the camera, clutching her diploma with both hands. "Mary, what did I do wrong?" I whispered to the worn photograph. "Where did I lose her?" The memory hit me like a punch to the chest. Loretta at 8, crying because kids at school teased our car. That month, I'd worked 3 extra shifts just to buy her new clothes for school, determined she'd never feel embarrassed again. And Mary, ever Mary, kneeling beside her little girl's bed. Family sticks together, sweetheart. Money comes and goes, but family is forever. But tonight, Loretta had chosen money. She'd measured wealth against 30 years of a father's love, and sided with Victor. The little girl who once defended me had grown into a woman ashamed of where she came from. Another memory surfaced, last Christmas. Loretta had visited for barely 2 hours before rushing back to the city, distracted, constantly checking her phone, offering excuses about important people she needed to see. I'd thought it was just teenage independence, a daughter carving out her life. Now I realized she'd been drifting away for months, maybe years, ashamed of my modest house, my old truck, my simple clothes. Victor hadn't corrupted her. He had merely given her permission to reveal what had been there all along. Back on the highway, approaching the Stamford exit, a shift came over me. Shock was settling into something colder, more deliberate. 30 years I had poured everything into her. 30 years of sacrifice, putting her needs above my own, building a life for her, and she'd thrown it all away without hesitation, choosing him the moment he demanded it. The ache in my chest remained, but alongside it, something else had grown, a quiet, fierce determination. If Loretta wanted to judge people by money, perhaps it was time she understood exactly what real money looked like. I hadn't slept. Dawn found me pacing the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling through my 3rd pot of the night. The house felt quieter, emptier somehow. Family photos lined the mantel, Mary and me on our wedding day, Loretta's first steps, birthdays, graduations, moments of happiness when money had never mattered. But now she had chosen money over family. If that was her measure of worth, then it was time she saw what real wealth looked like. I creaked down the wooden stairs to the basement. Morning sunlight slanted through tiny windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. Most of the basement was my workshop, tools hanging neatly on pegboards, projects scattered across my workbench. Behind it, hidden under an old tarp, sat the safe I'd bought in 1995, the same year I made my first real investment. My fingers dialed the combination automatically, Mary's birthday, then Loretta's. The heavy door swung open with a soft click. Inside, organized in manila folders, lay my secret, stock certificates, investment papers, bank statements. Decisions that once seemed reckless now proved brilliantly prescient. The Apple folder came first. I lifted the certificate dated September 15, 1995, 1,000 shares at $50 each. My life savings at the time, invested in a company most thought doomed. My engineering colleagues had laughed. $50,000 down the drain, my boss had said. Instead, I had bought Apple stock 3 months before Steve Jobs returned. The Tesla folder was even thicker. My second major gamble, 2003, Elon Musk, a Silicon Valley dreamer with a wild idea about electric cars. Another $50,000 invested when Tesla was barely more than a business plan. I fired up my old laptop and checked the current prices. The numbers glowed like something unreal. Apple at $247 a share. Tesla at $189. With stock splits and reinvested dividends over the years, those small risks had multiplied beyond anything I could have imagined. My Apple investment alone had grown to $12 million. Tesla, $4 million. Other tech ventures added another million. $17 million hidden in my basement, while my daughter called me a beggar. Then I pulled out the folder that cut deepest, draft documents for Loretta's wedding gift, prepared months ago, a trust fund of $10 million, structured to provide for her future, encourage education and charitable giving. I had planned to surprise her during my speech. She had humiliated me for being poor while sitting across from a man worth more than everyone in that restaurant combined. She had chosen flashy wealth over her father's quiet abundance. I dialed James Thompson, my broker of 15 years. Leland? James sounded surprised. You never call during business hours. Everything okay? Everything's fine, James. I need to make some changes to my will, specifically Loretta's inheritance. Changes? But Leland, what happened? Let's just say circumstances have changed. I want to revise the trust fund arrangements. As we worked through the details, a strange satisfaction settled over me. Victor wanted to play games with money, judge people by their bank accounts, exclude those he deemed unworthy. Perfect. I could play that game too, and unlike him, I had the resources to make it meaningful. I returned all the documents to the safe, spun the combination lock, and walked upstairs. For the first time since last night, I smiled. Not warmly, but coldly, calculatingly. If Loretta wanted to learn about real money, about true power, I would gladly give her that lesson. The phone rang as I reached the kitchen, shrill against the morning quiet. The newspaper lay folded beside my breakfast plate, but I couldn't focus on the headlines. Yesterday's hurt had hardened into something sharper, more useful. My eggs grew cold as I sat at the small kitchen table, morning light streaming through windows that needed curtains. The chipped coffee mug in my hands felt familiar, grounding, comforting in its simplicity. The phone rang, slicing through the quiet morning like a sharpened knife. Loretta's name flashed on the caller ID. I let it ring twice more before answering, my voice carefully measured. Hello, daughter. Good morning, Daddy, she replied, her tone overly sweet, dripping with calculated warmth. How are you today? Fine. What's on your mind? A pause. Then the manipulation started, slow and deliberate. Well? I was hoping we could talk about the wedding, she said. Victor and I have some details to finalize. She trailed off, leaving the silence for me to fill. I didn't. The thing is, Daddy, we've run into a small financial snag. The florist wants payment upfront, and the decorator is requesting a hefty deposit by Friday. Victor's money is tied up in some important investments right now. How much? I asked, already guessing. $30,000, she said casually, like she was talking about the weather. I know it's a lot, but all the other parents are contributing big amounts. I just thought you'd want to help make my day perfect. The audacity stole my breath. Yesterday, I was a beggar unfit to attend her wedding. Today, she wanted my money. That's interesting, I said slowly. Yesterday, I was too poor for your wedding. Today, you're asking me for $30,000. Daddy, that's different. Her voice sharpened. This is about the wedding itself, not social expectations. Social expectations, I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the words. I see. So just give me the money. Why make it complicated? Now the mask slipped entirely, revealing the entitled woman she had become. It's not like you have anything else to spend it on, in that tiny house of yours. No. What do you mean, no? I mean no, Loretta. Ask Victor's rich friends. His important business associates. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to cover your social expectations. You're being ridiculous. I'm your daughter. Yes, I said quietly. You are, and yesterday, you made it very clear what that means to you. A pause. Then, cold and calculating. Fine. Don't help, but don't expect any relationship with me after this. Victor says he doesn't need people in his life who won't support his happiness. Goodbye, Loretta. I hung up before she could reply. The kitchen was silent again, but the emptiness felt heavier now. I stared at the phone, processing what had just happened. $30,000, more than most people earned in a year, asked as casually as borrowing 20 for lunch. She had no shame, no acknowledgement of yesterday's cruelty. In her mind, the wedding justified everything, erased all betrayals. I pulled out my calendar. June 15th, circled in red. 3 weeks away. Just enough time to show her what real money looked like. The following weeks crawled by. I spent every moment researching, planning, quietly consulting with my broker. Every detail had to be precise for what I had in mind. Saturday afternoon, I sat at a cafe on a corner in downtown Stamford, basking in the spring sunlight. I'd chosen the spot deliberately. Emily often came here on weekends to grade papers and prep lessons. My newspaper served as a prop, a cold cup of coffee at my side. Right on schedule, she appeared. Laptop bag slung over her shoulder, cheerful, unsuspecting. Mr. Watkins! Her face lit up. What a wonderful surprise! Are you here planning wedding surprises too? Perfect. She had given me the opening I needed. Emily, how lovely to see you. Please have a seat. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. Wedding surprises? She said, practically glowing with excitement as she settled in. I probably shouldn't say anything, but since you're Loretta's father, I've been helping with some final touches. June 15th is coming so fast. Indeed, I said, leaning forward with all the apparent fatherly interest I could muster. Tell me about the venue. She spoke eagerly. Greenwich. A grand estate, absolutely gorgeous. Victor really knows how to pick places. 200 guests. The catering alone is $150 per person. I shook my head, tasting the bitterness in her words. 200 guests, $30,000 for food. Yet she had begged me for money as if they were scraping by. What time does it all start? I asked, keeping the interested father act. Ceremony at 4, cocktails in the garden, dinner at 7, dancing until midnight. Valet parking, of course. Victor insisted. His business associates expect a certain standard. How thoughtful of him. I muttered under my breath, my words dripping with poison she wouldn't notice. Loretta seems a little stressed about everything being perfect. Emily continued, unconsciously providing intelligence. Victor has very specific ideas about how it should all look. The flowers, the music, even the seating charts, every detail had to satisfy his exacting standards. I nodded, feigning sympathy. It sounds like quite the undertaking, I said. I'd love to do something special for them, but I want it to be a surprise. You won't tell anyone about our conversation, will you? Of course not. Emily beamed. I love surprises. What are you thinking? Oh, I'm still figuring out the specifics, but having the timeline helps immensely. We talked for another 20 minutes, Emily unwittingly giving me a full briefing on the wedding, arrival schedules, guest parking, seating plans, even the security measures Victor insisted on. She was a goldmine of information, completely unaware she was helping me orchestrate something far beyond a simple fatherly gesture. When she finally left, promising again to keep our conversation confidential, I remained seated, pulling out a small notebook. I recorded every detail she had shared. At the bottom of the page I wrote, Luxury car dealerships, Manhattan. It was time to move to the next stage of my plan. A taxi dropped me at the corner of 5th Avenue and 57th Street, where luxury showrooms claimed prime Manhattan real estate. Through gleaming windows, I could see rows of cars that cost more than most people's homes: Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Aston Martin, vehicles for those who never worried about money. I dressed deliberately in my usual attire: khakis, worn jacket, simple shoes. The only hint that this visit might be more than window shopping was the leather portfolio in my hand. Inside, the marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Well-dressed salespeople moved smoothly between clients, instantly sizing up anyone who entered. Their eyes swept past me without a second thought. I approached the centerpiece of the showroom, a midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom, its chrome glittering under the lights. The price tag read $547,000. Sir? A young salesman said hesitantly. Are you sure you're in the right place? I want to purchase your finest Rolls-Royce Phantom, I said evenly. He laughed outright. Sir, these cars start at $500,000. Perhaps I could show you something more suitable to your budget? Other customers began to notice, exchanging amused glances and whispers about the bewildered older man who'd wandered in by mistake. I opened my portfolio and produced a certified check for $500,000, placing it carefully on the glass counter. The change was immediate. His smirk vanished, replaced by stunned disbelief. Within moments, a manager arrived, then another, all suddenly eager to assist. I am terribly sorry, Mr. Watkins, the manager stammered. Please, allow me to personally show you our premium collection. For the next hour, I was treated like royalty. Every feature was demonstrated, every option meticulously explained. I chose quickly, decisively. Midnight blue exterior, cream leather interior, every available technology package. The staff watched in awe as I selected options worth more than their annual salaries without hesitation. Our premium chauffeur service is also available, the manager added as we finalized paperwork. Our top driver, Marcus Thompson, former military, impeccable record, total discretion guaranteed. Marcus appeared minutes later, tall, professional, perfectly uniformed. His handshake was firm, his demeanor respectful. It would be an honor to serve you, Mr. Watkins, he said after I outlined my basic requirements. When will you need the service? I asked. June 15th, I said. A wedding in Greenwich. The logistics are somewhat unconventional. I understand completely, sir. Discretion and professionalism are my specialties. As I signed the final documents, I glanced at my calendar. June 15th, circled in red, just 2 weeks away. Everything was falling into place perfectly. The same people who had dismissed me an hour earlier now practically bowed as I left, respect bought with a single check. Soon, Loretta and Victor would learn the same lesson about assumptions and appearances. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have dared step into a place like Brooks Brothers. The Madison Avenue flagship gleamed like a temple to wealth, polished windows displaying suits more expensive than most people earned in a month. But today, stepping out of the taxi onto the bustling sidewalk, I carried myself differently. The triumph at the Rolls-Royce showroom had shifted something inside me. The doorman nodded respectfully as I entered the showroom. Crystal chandeliers illuminated displays of Italian wool and Egyptian cotton, while consultants moved among clients with smooth, practiced efficiency. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today? The consultant was impeccably groomed, his tailored suit itself a quiet endorsement of the store's quality. I need a full transformation, I said simply. Custom tailoring, accessories, the works. I have an important event in 3 weeks. Excellent. Let's start with measurements and discuss the image you want to project. For the next 2 hours, I received a master class in luxury. The consultant explained thread counts, fabric weights, and construction techniques while taking meticulous measurements. We settled on a deep charcoal gray Italian wool, so fine it felt like silk under my fingertips. I need to look like a millionaire, I said as we examined style options. This suit will do exactly that, Mr. Watkins, he said confidently. Classic cut, flawless construction, perfect fit. You'll command respect the instant you enter a room. Next came the accessories, a $15,000 Rolex Datejust, its gold and steel shimmering under the showroom lights, Egyptian cotton shirts, a silk tie woven with subtle burgundy threads, Italian leather shoes handcrafted in Florence. Each piece could have been a month's budget in my old life, yet together they formed something commanding. The first fitting revealed a man I barely recognized. The suit reshaped my posture, my presence, my entire aura. In the mirror, The modest retiree from Connecticut was gone. Instead, I saw confidence, authority, and wealth. "We'll have everything ready by June 12th, the consultant promised as I wrote another substantial check. "Final fitting on the 13th, and you'll be fully prepared." Back on Madison Avenue, I caught my reflection in the store window. Even in my old clothes, something had changed. The way I carried my shoulders, the steady focus of my gaze, the faint curve of a knowing smile. 3 weeks remained until June 15th, time to reveal the real me. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus, ensuring every detail was coordinated, every timing perfected. The transformation was nearly complete. Dawn arrived clear and bright on June 15th, bathing my modest bedroom in golden light. I'd slept better than I had in months, waking naturally at 6. Today felt charged with possibility, heavy with destiny. Breakfast was simple: eggs, toast, black coffee in my familiar chipped mug. Yet I ate deliberately, savoring what might be my last meal in my old life. By tomorrow, everything would change. The unsent wedding invitation lay on the kitchen table, elegant script announcing the union of Loretta Watkins and Victor Harrove at 4 o'clock. I had other plans for 4 o'clock. The shower ran hot and steady as I prepared for my final performance. Every action mattered: the precision of my shave, the careful styling of my hair, the deliberate transformation process. The Brooks Brothers suit hung in my closet, protected by its cover. I lifted it and marveled at its quality, the fabric flowing like liquid silver, the tailoring flawless. Sliding the jacket onto my shoulders, it felt sculpted to my body. The Rolex on my wrist was weighty, a constant reminder of the power I now commanded. Italian leather shoes, silk tie, gold cufflinks, all combining to project quiet wealth and unshakable confidence. I studied myself in the bedroom mirror. The man looking back was nothing like the humble retiree humiliated months ago. This was authority incarnate, a millionaire who commanded attention. From my dresser, I picked up the small stack of note cards containing my speech. Practiced countless times, the words now felt electric with possibility. $17 million. The phrase alone would change everything. Mary's photograph smiled from the nightstand, her eyes warm with remembered love. I whispered softly, "I hope you understand. They need to learn that family matters more than money." At exactly 2:30, the deep rumble of the Rolls-Royce announced Marcus's arrival. I watched from my front window as neighbors stepped out, eyes drawn to the luxury car in my driveway. A $500,000 vehicle outside a home worth less than $200,000. Marcus stood by the rear door, immaculate in his chauffeur's uniform. "Good afternoon, Mr. Watkins. You look impeccable." "Thank you, Marcus. Today will be interesting indeed." I settled into the cream leather interior. The door closed with a satisfying thunk, a reminder of German engineering and British craftsmanship. As we departed my quiet street, I stole one last look at the modest house I had called home since Mary's passing. By evening, pretense would no longer be necessary. The grand estate appeared through the tinted windows like a scene from a fairy tale. Manicured gardens stretched across rolling hills, punctuated by marble fountains and classical statuary. The Georgian mansion rose 3 stories, its columns and terraces declaring wealth in every detail. "Impressive venue," Marcus observed. "Victor certainly knows how to spend money." Bentleys, Lamborghinis, and Mercedes lined the valet area, owners in designer attire that probably cost more than most cars. I counted nearly 200 guests on terraces and gardens, laughter and conversation blending into a refined hum. Marcus positioned the Rolls-Royce perfectly, in direct line with the guest's view. As he opened my door, I saw Loretta and Victor near the garden entrance, greeting arrivals with practiced smiles, completely unaware their world was about to shift. "Shall I wait here, sir?" Marcus asked. "Yes. I suspect this won't take long." The moment I stepped onto the stone drive, heads turned. Conversations halted as 200 wealthy guests processed the sight, the Rolls-Royce, and the man stepping out of it. "Who is that?" someone whispered. "Look at that car, that's a phantom. Easily $500,000. Is that Loretta's father?" I thought Victor said he was. The whispers spread like waves across the crowd. I moved toward the reception with deliberate confidence, each step measured for maximum effect. Sunlight caught the Rolex on my wrist, glinting sharply, while my Italian shoes clicked authoritatively on the stone pathway. Loretta noticed me first. Her champagne glass froze midair, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition then shock. She clutched Victor's arm, whispering urgently. His smile faltered as he snapped his head up, eyes widening as he took in the figure approaching him. I could see his mind scrambling, trying to reconcile the memory of a beggar at a restaurant with the impeccably dressed, clearly wealthy man walking directly toward him. "Mr. Watkins," Victor's voice cracked slightly as he hurried forward, Loretta stumbling to keep pace. We simply forgot to send you an invitation. How wonderful that you could make it anyway. How kind of you to remember me now," I replied smoothly, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "Lovely venue. You have exquisite taste." The guests continued to stare, their perception of the wedding party shifting with each passing second. Wealth attracts attention, and I could feel their curiosity pulling them in, desperate to understand the unfolding spectacle. Victor struggled to maintain composure, his mind racing. The man he had called a beggar was here, arriving in a Rolls-Royce, draped in clothing worth more than most guests' annual incomes. I sipped my champagne, glancing at my Rolex. 3:55. 5 minutes until the ceremony began, the perfect timing. The reception transitioned smoothly from ceremony to celebration. Guests mingled on the terrace before moving inside for dinner. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with white roses and golden accents, while a string quartet played softly in the background. The room buzzed with polite chatter about the beautiful ceremony, and the mysterious, wealthy father who had arrived in such dramatic style. I positioned myself near the head table, champagne in hand, observing as the evening unfolded. Loretta kept glancing toward me, forcing smiles as she tried to reconcile my transformation. Victor maintained his confident mask, though I caught him whispering urgently to a groomsman, no doubt trying to figure out how the beggar had acquired such conspicuous wealth. The moment I had waited months for arrived when the wedding coordinator tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin dinner, we have a special toast from the bride's father, Mr. Leland Watkins." Perfect timing. I strode to the microphone, every eye in the room locking on me. Conversations died as 200 guests held their breath, expecting the familiar, sentimental fatherly blessing. Loretta's hopeful expression softened. Perhaps she thought this would be a normal, touching moment. She was mistaken. "Dear guests," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Thank you all for joining us to celebrate my daughter's wedding. This is a magnificent venue, and I see no expense has been spared to make today memorable." Polite murmurs rippled through the crowd. Loretta's shoulders relaxed slightly. Victor nodded, approvingly, unaware of what was coming next. "Some of you may not know me well," I continued, pausing strategically. "I am Leland Watkins, Loretta's father, the same man some have referred to as a beggar." The words seemed to hang in the air like a tangible thing. Conversations halted mid-sentence as guests struggled to process what they just heard. Victor's face turned pale at the bridal table. "I hope you won't mind if I share a brief story about family values, and the true measure of a person's worth." My hand moved into the inside pocket of my jacket, brushing against the folded documents I had prepared for this exact moment. Around the room, several guests discreetly reached for their phones, sensing that something remarkable was about to happen. Loretta's champagne glass trembled in her hand as alarm and disbelief slowly dawned in her eyes. This wasn't the sentimental fatherly toast she had imagined. "What you don't understand about that description," I said, slowly drawing the papers from my pocket, "is what these documents actually represent." Every eye in the room followed my motion. The ballroom had fallen into such hushed stillness that I could hear the delicate clink of crystal and the soft rustle of silk as guests leaned forward, straining to catch every detail. "Let me show you exactly what they contain," the papers whispered as I unfolded them, each movement sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet room. 200 pairs of eyes were fixed on me, some phones already recording the unfolding drama, sensing they were witnessing something historic. "These documents," I said, my voice clear and deliberate, "are my investment portfolio. Current value, $17 million. The effect was instantaneous and electric. Gasps echoed through the room, exploding into whispers of disbelief. 17 million? Did he just say million? This is unbelievable. I held the brokerage statements aloft, letting the nearest guest glimpse the official letterhead and the numbers. Apple stock purchased in 1995 for $50,000. Tesla stock acquired in 2003 for another $50,000. Today, both worth millions. Loretta's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. "Dad, please," she whispered, but her voice was drowned in the stunned murmurs of the crowd. "I have never been, nor will I ever be, a beggar," I continued, my tone calm and measured. "I am, however, a father who was publicly humiliated by his daughter's fiancé for the supposed crime of dressing modestly." Victor sprang to his feet, his face red with panic and fury. "This is absurd. You're ruining our wedding!" But the crowd remained riveted, phones capturing every word of my unprecedented revelation. "Originally," I said, retrieving another set of documents, "I had planned a different wedding gift, a $10 million trust fund, established solely for Loretta's future security." The number landed in the room like a hammer. Loretta's face drained of color as the gravity of my words sank in. 10 million, she breathed, almost inaudible. "Until 3 months ago, when my daughter sided with her fiancé, the same man who decided I was too poor, too embarrassing, too much of a beggar to attend their wedding." The crowd's attention shifted collectively to Victor and Loretta, amazement giving way to judgment. I could see wealthy guests recalculating everything they believed they knew about this couple. Then, with a flourish, I revealed the final documents. "My entire $17 million fortune will be donated to educational charities. Specifically scholarships for children from modest backgrounds, those whom society might dismiss as beggars because of appearances alone." The papers in my hand were signed trusts, legally binding and irreversible, filed with my attorney just yesterday. The decision was final. Loretta's wedding gown rustled as she stumbled toward the microphone, her face frozen in horror. 10 million? She whispered, stunned. "I lost 10 million because of..." Victor's composure finally shattered. "You insane old man?" he bellowed, his voice cutting through the stunned murmurs. "You've destroyed everything, our future, our plans, our..." But the crowd had stopped watching me. All eyes were now on Victor and Loretta, a mixture of shock and disdain painted on their faces as phones captured the couple's public unraveling. Justice, I realized, had never felt so complete. "I believe," I said, calm and composed into the microphone, "I have said everything I intended to say." I stepped away and began toward the ballroom exit, the crowd parting before me like the Red Sea. Every step was deliberate, dignified, carrying the weight of justice flawlessly executed. Behind me, chaos erupted, Loretta's sobs, Victor's furious shouting, guests whispering excitedly as they digested what they had just witnessed. "Dad! Dad, wait!" Loretta's voice cracked, desperate as she rushed after me in her elaborate gown. "We need to talk about this. We can work something out." I paused and turned, meeting her tear-streaked face with the quiet composure of a man who had orchestrated this moment for months. "Daughter," I said quietly, my voice steady, "you made your choice 3 months ago when you called me a beggar and sided with your fiancé. That was cruelty. Now I've made mine." "I'm sorry," Loretta said, her voice trembling. "I was wrong about everything. Can't we talk about this like a family?" The word family hung between us, heavy with bitter irony. Around us, 200 eyes were fixed on our private drama, smartphones raised, documenting every moment for social media posterity. "Some choices," I said softer now, "carry permanent consequences. You chose his wealth over your father's love. Now you must live with that decision." Behind her, Victor was unraveling completely, shouting at anyone who would listen. "This is madness. He's gone completely insane. You can't take seriously the ramblings of a deranged old man." But the guests, wealthy, composed, influential, were stepping back from him. Their expressions made their judgment clear. This was a man who had thrown away $10 million through sheer arrogance. I heard an older gentleman murmur to his wife, "$17 million? That boy lost $17 million just for insulting the father." I continued my deliberate walk toward the exit, Loretta's desperate pleas trailing behind me. The ballroom doors opened to the grand foyer of the estate. Marcus stood waiting beside the Rolls-Royce. "Professional as always," he said, opening the rear door. "I trust everything went according to plan, sir?" "Better than I could have imagined," I replied, sliding into the cream leather interior. As the Phantom purred to life, I caught one last glimpse through the tinted windows. Loretta stood alone on the marble steps, her wedding gown flowing around her, mascara streaking her cheeks as she watched her father, and $10 million, vanish forever. Victor was surrounded by a cluster of guests, their gestures animated, their faces betraying their judgment as they discussed his spectacular fall from grace. The Rolls-Royce glided silently down the estate's tree-lined drive, carrying me away from the wedding wreckage and toward whatever came next. In the distance, guests on the terrace were still buzzing, exchanging whispers about what they had just witnessed. My phone buzzed with notifications. Probably Emily, maybe Loretta, perhaps even some guests who had managed to get my number. I turned it off without a glance. Justice, I thought, watching the Connecticut countryside slip past the windows, had never felt more satisfying. The modest retiree who had been humiliated 3 months ago was gone. In his place sat a man who had proven that true wealth is not measured by money, it is measured by dignity, respect, and knowing your own worth. Some lessons, I reflected with quiet satisfaction, are worth $17 million to teach. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left.